Hey there everyone, and welcome to another year-end video of 2014 for my channel. And in this one we're going to talk about honourable mentions. Cue the end.
Warriors year-end videos. Honorable mentions. Middle-earth. Shadows of Mordor. Murdered Soul Suspect.
That's right, we're talking two honourable mentions here. These games both were good. However, something about them just didn't feel like they deserved to be on my personal games of the year. And those two games are, as I stated, are Murdered Soul Suspects and Shadows of Mordor, or Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor. I prefer Shadows, it sounds more cool. I'm going to talk about Shadows first before we move on to Murdered Soul Suspects. I have more to say about Shadows than I do that. Firstly, of course, I like the Lord of the Rings franchise. I actually do think it is a very interesting fantasy setting. I'm not the biggest fan of the movies personally. I do enjoy them, but I haven't watched them in years. And the Hobbit franchise is alright as well. But I like the fact that Shadows of Mordor Middle-earth actually took a little bit of a leap of faith and actually set something different that wasn't based in the Lord of the Rings movies or franchise and just set in the world of Middle-earth with Talion. I actually really liked it. It had good gameplay, it had a good story, story is paramount to me. I liked the story, it was very engrossing, very detailed. The voice acting cast was absolutely superb. They had Claudia Black, Nolan North, Troy Baker, and many, many other talented voice actors and actresses who all did a superb job to actually bring the game to life. It actually added so much more to the game. And the Nemesis system as well also added something to the game as well, which I really liked. The fact that you could build your own story with these Nemesis and be like, you're my bloody Nemesis and I'm going to find you and I'm going to kill you or I'm going to dominate you. It just added a little extra layer to the story in my opinion. I really liked that aspect. It was fun. I did a lot of the side content in there and it was an absolute gem and treat to actually play. And why is it in my Game of the Year's mention? Because the story was overall enjoyable, but the ending was disappointing. Now, major spoilers for the ending here. It's a cliffhanger ending. It basically is an ending that is setting up for a sequel or DLC. Which, don't get me wrong, I get the point of doing that sometimes with open-ended endings, but this is a sequel-based ending, not an open-ended ending. It basically, the guy that you're meant to be going up against, the guy that you've been chasing after all this time, which I think is the mouth of Sauron, I believe, if memory serves me. You're going up against him and you don't even get a boss battle with him. You actually just, it's a quick time event and he's dead. I didn't like it. It was massively disappointing for me. It just ruined what could have been a really, really good game and a really good Game of the Year contender. However, that ending and accompanied with a couple of glitches and a couple of parts of the story that just made me go, huh? Just kind of knocked it off my top 5 personally. I did enjoy it, and I just like the fact that we got to see something more than just another Lord of the Rings game. We got to see a Middle-earth game, and I do hope we actually see more Middle-earth games like this, trying different franchises, trying different things that basically has nothing to do with the books or the other materials out there. It doesn't always have to be about the ring. It can be about the world of Middle-earth, exploring different stories, hearing different aspects of it. I found it very fascinating. It just made me like the Lord of the Rings franchise, the Middle-earth world, that little bit more and made me want to actually see more of it. I want to see more developers being able to just say, here's the Middle-earth franchise, make a game. You don't have to set it, don't need to do the movies, don't need to, you can set it after the movies, before the movies, or before the books, after the books, whatever it is. I like the fact that they actually got that. Now, there are still some subtle references to the game, the movies and the books, of course, with Gollum being it and the ring, of course. But overall, I just think it was very well done. They only referenced the movies and other materials, rarely, just enough that it makes it connected. So I did give it major props and I did enjoy it. I had a pleasant time playing it. Not Game of the Year not a Game of the Year, but definitely a honourable mention. And the other one, of course, is Murdered Soul Suspects, which I actually do have the case for. I don't have the case for Shadows of Mordor because I actually gave it a loan to my cousin. This was actually a game that was published by Square Enix and developed by Airtight Games, who sadly went out of business after making this. Well, not after making the game. The game didn't do too well, and that's a shame in my opinion. Now, calling this as a game is probably a bit of a stretch. It is more of a interactive story with some puzzle elements into it. I enjoyed it. I actually liked the story of it, which is something I think which is kind of different in my opinion. This game is purely story mostly. There are some minor gameplay and puzzle elements, and it doesn't really penalise you for getting anything wrong beyond a little bit of a point system in there. But the story itself was very fascinating. You play a recently murdered detective, and the whole goal of the story is to figure out who the bell tower murderer is, and also why he killed you. Why is he after this particular medium? And you're trying to figure that out, and as you go on through the story, you unravel the story, and I was compelled to figure out what happened in this story. You also find out about the past of the cop as well, and he does have the generic sad background where he lost his wife. He was a thug. He was part of some kind of crime family that eventually turned his life around and became a cop. And we also find that he actually had to fake his identity to make sure his record wasn't discovered to become a cop. And we find out a really interesting story with him and find out why he's doing that. And it was very heartwarming, mostly because of how well voice acted it was. It just shows that even if it's a standard, typical story, adding a little twist to it and having excellent voice actors and voice cast can make a story or a game absolutely phenomenal. And I definitely think this will actually be a bit of a cult hit in the future, where I think people will pick it up and see that it did have potential. I liked the story. It barely had any gameplay in it, but I still enjoyed it, and I do not regret playing it. I still think it doesn't make a Game of the Year contender, in my opinion, is the fact that it is kind of barely a game. It doesn't really have any gameplay elements beyond solving a couple of puzzles. But I did grow connected to the characters, and also the little collectibles around it. Actually, if you collect like these, there's little items in the world in different areas. Like for one example is you'll find gas canisters, ghost echoes they're called if memory serves me, which are little fragments of a story. And if you collect all of them, you get a little bit more of the story of Salem, where the game is actually set. It tells different little stories about how this hitchhiker and all that. It just adds more to this. It actually flushes out the world very well, especially in the world of Salem. And I actually really liked it. It was fascinating, and finding out what happened and learning these new tricks and all that, and seeing stuff that the humans can't see but the dead see all the time. I liked it, I enjoyed it, I had fun playing it, and I'm sad that we will not actually get a sequel to it. Even though, in all honesty, the main character has a definitive ending. The character whose name I forget, Ronan O'Connor, yeah, he's Irish. Even though I don't think this game in all honesty, his story kind of came to an end. He had a definitive ending where it ended, but it doesn't mean the murdered sole suspect series had to have him as the protagonist. I saw potential in actually having different protagonists for each game franchise in this, in my opinion, and it could have been a nice little franchise of ghost stories and all that about all that. I think it had potential. But unfortunately, it didn't do too well, and unfortunately, the developer went out of business, which is a massive disappointment to me, because I saw the potential in this franchise, and sadly, it will not continue. Or if it does, it won't be under the same development. But I did enjoy it, and I'm glad it is, and I would say I'd recommend at least checking it out. You could probably get it fairly cheap now. Murder Soul Suspect, in my opinion, is one of the gems that was overlooked this year, and I would actually recommend it. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed those honourable mentions. And now we move on to characters of the year. The ones that I personally think are my absolute gems and I absolutely adored. I'll see you in the next video. Ciao for now.